I'm going to introduce the man of hour. This is Dr. Adil Najam, who's also the VC of LUMS University. And more importantly, and I was very impressed that he was part of the panel in 2009 that worked on documents that helped win the Nobel Peace Prize. Let's ask him a few questions. First of all, welcome and thank you for joining us. My first question is that what do you think is Pakistan's main challenge regarding climate change? What are the problems that we are facing?
I think Pakistan's main challenge regarding climate is exactly the same that's Pakistan's main challenge in anything, and that is development. We need to contextualize climate change in the Pakistani context, and that means putting it into a development framework. Thinking about what climate change does to the poorest, thinking about what climate change does to the already deprived. And therefore, we have to see it not as a carbon problem, but as a human problem.
All right, we talked about development. So sustainable development. How do you think we can achieve it? How far is Pakistan lagging behind? And what is your message in particular to the policymakers who hold the real powers?
So once one starts thinking about climate as a development problem, what does that mean? That means that the energy problem, which in the US or the UK would be a problem of energy emissions, in Pakistan becomes a problem of load shedding. And it becomes a problem of what do you do to load shedding that eases the burden on the average Pakistani, because that's a huge, huge problem, but at the same time, it also is climate friendly. Right? So as we think of new sources, we have to think of sources that also keep the carbon issue in mind. The climate problem, when it becomes a development problem, becomes a water problem. And then the problem becomes, how do we incorporate the fact that the glaciers are melting, flooding may be on the rise, drought may also be on the rise. How do we deal with that in an agricultural economy? So that's what I mean about, that's what the policymakers need to think. Instead of saying that climate is a separate problem and we'll solve all these development problems separately and then tomorrow come to climate, we need to incorporate the climate thinking into our development thinking.
All right. In your speech, you mentioned something about green economy and green cities and sustainable cities. If you can just enlighten us what that means, and if you can comment on Pakistan's progress in thinking about such issues and whether we are in a process of making a green city anywhere in Pakistan.
So two concepts here, one the green economy and one the green city. Let me start with the city. Till now, in the past, we have usually thought of cities as problems. Lots of people, congestion, slums, disease, large congregation of people. We need to move from thinking of cities as problems to start thinking of cities as solutions. We've always told ourselves Pakistan is a rural country. Not really true any longer. It is still a very rural country, but it is also now a very urban country. What used to be small cities are now big cities. What used to be big cities are now huge cities. So unless we start thinking of the urban centers of Pakistan as a motor not just for growth but for development and for climate action, we are not going to get there. As to the green economy, there's a lot of talk internationally on what the green economy is, and it essentially talks about growth, it essentially talks about industry. We need to start thinking about green economy in a Pakistani context. We have a green flag, we have a green passport, we need a green economy. And in the Pakistani context, the green economy means things like energy efficiency, things like reduced waste, things like more efficient, environmentally efficient and economically efficient systems. That's what the green economy means.
All right. Since it's a global problem, what do you think? How can the developed and developing nations collaborate, and how can these two bodies really understand each other's problems? Do you think there's an understanding on some level?
At some level there is an understanding, at some there isn't. In some ways I think we need to get away from this very easy divide between the developed and developing. Every economy has both types of problems. The developed and the developing economy lives within Pakistan. There is a Pakistan in which you and I live, which is a very developed economy. There's another Pakistan in which lots of other Pakistanis live, which is a very different economy. So we need to resolve that both within our societies and globally. On some issues, there is convergence. On other issues, there will be divergence. But let's at least build on the issues on which we can converge.
And my last question is, what is your message to the viewers who will be watching this YouTube video, especially to the youngsters out there? And even if they're not so young, what's your message?
Well, whether they are young or not, the message is really that this climate change issue is not going to be solved by the governments. neither in Pakistan nor anywhere else. And it needs to be solved by us. My grandmother used to say something very beautiful. She used to say, point a finger at someone and 3 fingers point back at you. So we need to take ownership of the issue ourselves. This is about our future, and this really has to be solved in our present.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. As he said, it's our future. We need to take ownership and we need to figure out the solutions. Thank you everyone for watching this YouTube video.